So today we're joined by Ruth Lewis. Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am a breastfeeding counsellor and a co-founder and director of MoMa Breastfeeding, which is a mother-to-mother breastfeeding support organisation. At the moment, we are in England and Wales, but we are hoping to grow. The reason that we exist is because a group of us were essentially kicked out of another breastfeeding organisation, Lalech League, over gender ideology. Lalech League is an international organisation, and they were saying that leaders, which is what breastfeeding counsellors are called within LLL, have to support everyone who wants to breastfeed, chest feed, or feed their baby human milk, no matter their gender identity or sex. And that last one was just not okay.
No, I've seen some of the like in the news, men breastfeeding and I don't I know a little bit about breastfeeding, being a mother and having done it and how good it is for babies.
Mothers.
Don't really know a lot about the ins and outs of what men have to do in order to do that, but it just feels wrong. And I could just vociferal responses like, no, that's not right.
Absolutely.
But there'll be
I,
science, is there?
no, well, quite. So a lot of the time when I've talked to people in person about this, there's been a confusion. And when I've said that we were told that we had to support men to breastfeed if they wanted to, their reaction was, "You mean women who say they're men?" No. No, what we were talking about here was men who identify as women, or even if they don't, because gender identity didn't matter, that was who, if they came along and wanted support, we were going to have to support. And there are various aspects to the wrongness of that. Firstly, motivation matters in this particular arena. If it's a man wanting to breastfeed a child, then why? Because it's not about the baby. Because we don't know what the impact of the hormones and drugs that a man would have to take, what the impact that would be on the liquid that is produced. I had a conversation with someone within LLL who was at the time the publications director, because I stood down as the editor of Breastfeeding Matters, the member magazine, over language. And we had a conversation about why I was stepping down. And as well as talking about language, which is a separate issue I'd like to talk about, she said that there was plenty of evidence and research about inducing lactation, and that men were just using the same protocol as the women who can induce lactation, so it's fine. And when I pointed out that this was hormones and medications on a completely different physiology, and therefore the research was irrelevant, she just kind of brushed that off and suggested that it didn't matter. So there's what comes out is an issue, but also, and for me, a bigger issue in a lot of ways, why would a man want to breastfeed? They could talk about bonding. I would dispute that that is the case in the vast majority of the cases. And my husband managed to bond beautifully with our two children. And there are so many other ways to bond, whether it's a mother who's not breastfeeding, whether it's father or grandparents. You can bond with a child in any number of ways. A lot of the time when you see men breastfeeding, very much in inverted commas, it's about affirming an identity. It's giving them the reason, some kind of affirmation that if they are breastfeeding, in inverted commas, this baby, that is kind of proof of some kind that they are a woman, which of course you can't change sex no matter how much you want to. So it's not benign because it's still using the child as a tool, but compared to the more obvious safeguarding issue that for some men it is a fetish, it's from a safeguarding point of view, it's never going to be okay to support males to breastfeed. And that's a hill I'm prepared to die on, frankly.
Yeah. So there's no research about men and what they produce at all, like the actual liquid that comes out.
There are very, very few case studies that I'm aware of. I'm not a scientist. I'm a breastfeeding counsellor who supports
Yeah.
mothers to breastfeed, so I
I mean,
don't
it
know
feels wrong
much
just
about
to
that
even
side
think
of
about
things.
researching it, like, 'cause oh,
Yeah,
no, I just
there is one study that I'm aware of, which is the one that the BBC did some absolutely appalling reporting on, which they then had to row back and apologise about, where they conflated, it was 3 or 4
yeah,
pieces of research which were about women inducing lactation, which is possible, and one where it was a trans-identifying male who had induced lactation of a sort, and then they conflated those to talk about, therefore it's fine and the milk's all similar. In the case of the one male, there it was, what he produced was comparable to what a woman produces in what they looked at, but the proportions of fat and other things weren't the same. They were not within what would be considered the normal range for women, and at least some of the aspects of it weren't. And to be honest, I don't think that's particularly relevant. It's
no,
just, yeah, no,
just you just know deep down that it's just wrong. It just feels wrong, just everything about it.
yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been, like, learning a little bit more recently about, like, actual breast milk and how it changes, and I didn't even know that when I was breastfeeding. My friend was telling me that, she said that if you're breastfeeding a toddler at the same time as a baby, that your body knows which one to feed what. It
It does
changes depending on the
amazing
baby.
stuff.
Like, wow, didn't
And
know
a
that.
slightly different composition of milk if you're breastfeeding a boy compared to a girl.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's just amazing stuff. If your baby is been exposed to some kind of, I don't know, virus or infection, and the feedback that your body gets from their mouth at the breast means that your body starts to make antibodies which will fight the infection in the child. It's amazing stuff.
It is really amazing. I mean, I was amazed when I was breastfeeding. One day I had left the baby asleep and went to go in the shower, and I wouldn't usually share this sort of information, but it's relevant to this conversation. The milk just started squirting out of me, like out of the blue. So like I got ready, went downstairs, and it turned out that he was crying, but I didn't know he was crying. I didn't hear him, but my body obviously knew.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Huh? Yeah, just amazing what the body can do and what women's bodies can do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it must have been quite a difficult situation that you found yourself in when this happened, just knowing what I know about this ideology.
Yeah. It was very clear that not everyone who volunteers for La Leche League or any organisation believes that inclusivity should come without boundaries, which is effectively what they're saying. And a group of us, not knowing each other at all in some cases, decided that we would stand for election to the Council of Directors, which is what the trustees are called, of LLLGB, in order to get clarity around what was happening. And it turns out that what was being imposed by LLL International, they really did mean everybody who wanted support, which it just doesn't make sense. It
Oh,
really doesn't. And when we tried to raise issues and point out the safeguarding issue, that we were told that we were harmful for suggesting that, for using biological language. We were told that was harmful. The idea that supporting a male is not okay, that's very bigoted. It just, everything we tried to do, we were shut down. The language that we were needing to use in order to talk about reality, we were told that that wasn't okay. One of our number wrote to the board of LLL International asking for clarity about a number of things, because part of the issue was that all of the changes that had come about started with a mother who did not identify as a woman, and language was changed before anything else was. And so then the fact that the language was no longer rooted in biological reality, that was used to suggest that we've supported everyone for ages. What are you talking about? So that, I mean, I've talked to other people about this quite a lot, but essentially it boils down to the fact that we were extremely concerned. The charity was going beyond. It wanted to support more. When I say it, I mean the international
Yeah.
organisation was telling LLGB, and there were some women within the organisation who were very much on board with it. But it wasn't sticking to its charitable objects and working for its beneficiaries, because the beneficiaries are mothers. So we sought support from the Charity Commission, who were less than helpful. We were told by them in their closing letter about the serious incident report that I instigated, that they did not have a position on whether the organisation should become more trans inclusive, because obviously if you've got a biological mother who hasn't had a mastectomy, and wants to breastfeed her baby, then of course she'd be welcome, and we would use whatever language an individual wanted to use to make them comfortable. But you can't do that when you're talking about a population, and the
No.
population is mothers
Yeah.
in this particular instance. Boiled down to being kicked out. I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court judgment will mean that the Charity Commission will have to do their job and hold charities to account when it comes to ones that have mothers or women as their beneficiaries. We'll have to see what happens, but that, at least in law, is a lot clearer than it was, although it was clear in law even
I was
then.
gonna say, yes, it's not changed.
It's
It's
not,
just
but
that.
even if it had changed and they had decided that a gender recognition would change things, it still wouldn't have been the case for La Leche League, because La Leche League, sorry, was about mothers, and mothers was already settled in law.
Of course.
So, actually, it shouldn't have made any difference. And we had a legal opinion written by Akua Reindorf and KC saying as much. So, yeah, it
And that
shouldn't
would
have
have been
made a
before the
difference.
Supreme Court
That,
judgment.
yes, yes, yeah,
Just so frustrating.
yes, very much so.
And when they called you, was it hateful?
Yeah,
Who's it, and who's it harming? Who's it hateful towards? It's actually hateful. It's not hateful towards the children or mothers. It's
no,
protecting them.
absolutely.
And
Yes,
that's who always comes last in this ideology. It's always women.
yes, absolutely. There is a lot within, it's in maternity as well as breastfeeding, which are obviously things that only women can do.
Hmm.
It's an arena where the changes and the anti-women opinions and language and all of that, it's come from women,
Yeah.
which is the thing that makes, for me, it makes it deeply concerning, deeply
Yeah.
concerning.
Do you I was just
Yeah,
going to say, when I was doing my election campaign, we went out with leaflets, and we happened to be near a doctor's surgery, and we're giving out leaflets to mothers with their new babies. And some of the responses from them it was awful. They were some of the worst ones.
yeah. I think particularly in breastfeeding, a lot of the breastfeeding support is volunteer based because it's so patchy in the NHS. And I think that's something that we've talked about. It's a lot of volunteers they come from the Be Kind school of thought,
Yeah.
but it's just not
It's
kind.
not kind.
It's not kind to far more people, women, than it is kind to. So yes, it may be kind to the women who identify or want to identify out of their sexed reality, but it is not kind to the women who can't seek support because they think a man might be in the room.
Yeah.
whether that's for cultural or religious reasons, or much more likely because they've been the victim of male violence or
Yeah,
domestic abuse. And I've supported women like that who've told me, and they would not be able to sit in a room getting breastfeeding support where women do expose themselves. You can't feed a baby, particularly not when you're learning,
yeah,
without exposing your breasts. And I know of at least one woman who has taken her top off entirely in a breastfeeding support situation because she was so desperate
yeah.
and her breasts were so painful at the time. So you cannot do that. You cannot expect women to come in and seek the support where you are exposing yourself in that way and say, yeah, but men can come too.
No, it's against all of that, isn't it? The thing about women who identify out of their sex, though, I mean, I know none of this makes sense. None of the gender ideology makes sense, but that really is cognitive dissonance, isn't it?
It
Someone
has to be.
identifying
Yeah.
out of their sex and then having a baby.
There's nothing more female than having
No.
a baby. And there's nothing more, it's just so real.
Mhm.
You can't do that without being aware that you are female.
Yeah, it's the most physical way that you can be a female.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, we were kicked out eventually. We
Uh-huh.
didn't choose to leave. We were kicked out first as breastfeeding counsellors because we had spoken to the press, and apparently this was denigrating LLL. What we were actually doing was just responding to the fact that,
How's it denigrating them if they think it's the right thing to do?
well, we were just saying clearly what the charitable objects were and that they did not include men. We were being told, we were suspended as breastfeeding counsellors for talking about this within LLLGB.
So they know that it's wrong then, because otherwise they wouldn't have had a problem with you talking about it.
Exactly. Yes. So then eventually we had our accreditation as LLL leaders removed. And following that, it was the AGM when we were not re-elected, after something of a smear campaign, as you would imagine.
Goodness.
And we weren't re-elected to the Council of Directors as trustees. So we did what was the logical thing and set up a new organisation,
Yeah,
which
how long did all that take though, from all of that being
that
kicked out and
was
everything?
November was when the AGM was. We were already aware that if we wanted to continue doing what we had all become breastfeeding counsellors to do, which is support mums to breastfeed, we would need to set up something new. So we were working on that throughout December. January, I think, was when we set up as a CIC, a community interest company, because that's much quicker and easier than setting up as a charity. And then everything we did until quite near the end of when we went public was self-funded, which was setting up the website, it was paying for the trademarking, it was paying for the registration to become a CIC, it was sorting out insurance, all of those things that cost not masses and masses of money, but you have to have them in place
It's
in
your
order
time
to
as
raise
well, isn't
money
it? Yeah, it's your
and
time.
time. Yes, an
Your
awful lot of
time and
time.
energy and
Yes.
brain
Yeah,
power
very
and
much so. And we were writing all of our governing documents and starting on working on policies and deciding what we are calling our guiding principles are, because one of the things that attracted all of us to La Leche League is the philosophy, and it's so mother and child centered. It's all about the mother baby dyad, and that's all still true. All of that still holds true, but we needed to start from scratch essentially, but take all of the wisdom that has come from the women who set up La Leche League, including Marion Thompson, fabulous woman who resigned from LLL International shortly before we were finally kicked out over this issue. We've taken the wisdom from her and her colleagues, and we're keeping all the good stuff, which is all of the stuff about the mother baby dyad and the importance of that and everything that goes with it. So we've written our guiding principles, which you can, I'm not sure if you can find them on the website yet, but you will be able to very soon if you can't. And then we had to make sure um, that we could take money, basically, because I've been talking to journalists and other podcasters
Yeah,
for
well,
several months now.
met you at Nottingham Let Women Speak.
Yes,
I can't
indeed.
remember when that was.
Yeah, it's I think it might have been March. So, and I
Yeah,
spoke to Menno then, and
yeah, yeah,
I'd already spoken to the Insightful Sisters, and we'd been on Filia podcast. So we've been talking about it and how we were planning to set up a new organisation. And every single time we did that, the question was, how can we support you? Where can we give you money?
yeah.
And it's really hard to do that
Right, so
in
you
a
struggled with
sensible
taking
way.
money.
Yes. So when we finally had the website set up and we had a donate button that worked, that's when we said, right, okay, we can go public now. And I was on a coach on the way to Heathrow Airport because I was going on a trip with my choir to Norway. And I sent out this tweet thinking, okay, well, we know we've got some good support. It'll all be fine. I mean, the website fell over because people were trying to donate so much, which is a lovely problem to have. But obviously, you don't want people to go away and forget and not come
Yeah,
back and give you money. And so it took off very quickly. And then the following morning, I had a message from one of my co-directors who said, "You'll never guess who's donated." It was J.K. Rowling, and she tweeted that she had. So it's not a secret that she had done so. And it was really significant for us because it meant that we didn't have to choose between the things that we needed to do. We didn't have to decide which we could afford to do first, and we could
yeah,
do several things all at the same time and not worry about the first few months at least of all of the new groups where rooms cost money to have these meetings. And we were able to fairly quickly, as a result of that, set up a monthly donation option on the website. And so that's obviously made a huge difference in terms of what we could do in terms of setting up, for which we're hugely grateful, both to her and to everyone else who's
yeah.
donated. I'm at my mother-in-law's at the moment, and she was our very first donor before we even had a donate button because she gave my children some money for Easter, and then for an Easter present for me, she donated to MoMa
How lovely.
Breastfeeding, which was fabulous. So yeah, all the little regular donations are what are going to help us keep going and growing, and we are accrediting most for them to start with disaffected lactation leaders who don't want to support men who are becoming MoMA breastfeeding counsellors. So we're doing it sustainably. So we started off, there were just the 7 of us. 6 of us were LLL leaders. Some of us had been trustees, others hadn't and had chosen to resign. Plus the sister of one of our number who is a lawyer. She specialises in child protection, so very much has an understanding of why this matters. So yeah, so now we are all about mother-to-mother breastfeeding support, which is what we have always believed.
Yeah, it's a shame that you've had to do this, but in a way, it's like something like better is going to come from it because
Yeah,
you've all got the same principles. So
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we've had lovely messages from so many people, including Marion Thompson, who, as I said, was one of the co-founders of La Leche League. And we've named our logo after her, which she was very touched by and very happy that we wanted to say that publicly as well.
yeah.
So yeah, so we're keeping all of the good stuff.
Yeah, it's really great to see. I'm not sure that I knew that you were setting that up when I first met you at Nottingham because it was really difficult to hear what everyone was saying because we're on that footpath that was in front of the police station, weren't we? It was quite a
Yeah, with roadworks going on.
funnel down the path. And yeah, I certainly found it difficult to hear everything, but I did hear some of what you said, which is why I wanted to invite you to come on. But um, Yeah, and I know what it takes to set up an organisation from scratch, because I've done it myself. But yeah,
A lot of work,
it
which is
is.
well partly why it took 6 months until from when we were kicked out until when we could go public.
So what does the support that you're offering look like at the moment? Is it all in one area, or are you managing to spread out, or you're focusing in one place at first?
Well, because we're fairly geographically spread out anyway, just because of where we happen to live, that's where our first groups are going to be. I'm in Nottingham, and I'm still sorting out a venue, which I'm hoping to do certainly in the next few weeks. So I'll be able to start my meetings here. We have the first meeting for the Waltham Forest group in London I think it was yesterday or the day before. It was certainly this week. We also have Kent. We have a number of MoMa breastfeeding counsellors in Kent. In Hampshire, there are two groups within Hampshire. Well, the Fylde Coast near Blackpool. That's one group that has kind of been carrying on because Loretta, who runs the group up there, she is also happens to be an infant feeding IBCLC, an independent board certified lactation consultant, which is kind of the next step up. It's a professional qualification rather than a voluntary thing. We all know our stuff about the normal course of breastfeeding and supporting mothers. IBCLCs are who you would refer on to for anything more serious or tricky. Because she was one of those, she was able to have insurance through that. Whereas those of us who don't have that additional qualification, we no longer had the insurance. So we needed the new organisation to be part of. So there is up there as well. I'm sure I'll have missed one. And I'm not going to tell you now because we'll be doing a bit of an announcement, but we have
Okay.
got two new groups in different areas, which will be starting very, very soon. And we're just going through we've got our processes to welcome new counsellors, because our longer term plan is to be able to offer the training and the accreditation for anyone who's an experienced breastfeeding mother who wants to become a breastfeeding counsellor. We will be setting up a pathway to do that with MoMa Breastfeeding, but that's going to take a little while. So what we are doing first is talking to former LH leaders who would like to join us, because we know that they've got the training and we know that they believe in what we believe, because, as I say, we've taken all of the good bits of the philosophy for our guiding principles. So that's where we are at the moment. We're talking to them and working through our processes. And then we will be in a position to talk to breastfeeding counsellors from other organisations who might not be comfortable, because it's not just LH League who is about
Yeah.
including anyone who wants to breastfeed or chest feed or whatever they want to call it. But we are a breastfeeding support organisation, but we are a mother to mother breastfeeding support organisation who very much believes in mothering through breastfeeding. Just breast milk is amazing, as
Yeah.
we've talked about, but breastfeeding is more than just the milk. It's the relationship, it's the comfort, it's the being able to deal with tricky situations for a toddler who's fallen over or who's just overwhelmed. It's using breastfeeding as part of your mothering toolbox, if you like. It's
Yeah.
about all of those things as well as just the milk. And we want to make sure that anyone who does join us believes what we do.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe in any of what we believe in. You just need to be a mother who wants to breastfeed a baby to get support from us, but to become a part of the organisation, then we would expect prospective counsellors to genuinely believe in what we stand for.
Yeah. It's quite controversial, actually. Like social media saying that mothers, like women mother best. I've actually used words like that, and the horror from some place. I just can't believe how
Who else
distant we are
could
from. Yeah.
possibly mother
Like, oh
best apart
no,
from mother?
men can bring up children just as well. And I'm like, well, I'm sure they can, but the ideal is like for a mother to do it,
Absolutely. Yeah. I
because we've
mean,
evolved like that.
yeah.
And they think I'm sexist. I actually got called sexist against men and women at the same time. Can you believe it?
That's quite clever.
No, I'm like, I'm a magician.
Yeah, I mean, mothering is something particular, and my husband is a brilliant dad, but he doesn't
You
mother.
don't want me to be a mother?
No, absolutely not. And even when, if you have a lesbian couple, there's the biological mother, and the relationship is different,
Mhm.
particularly if she's breastfeeding, because that's it, that the baby is comes out expecting the mother, and the mother is the baby's environment. It's the baby's habitat, if you like.
Yeah,
It's what the baby expects and needs. And newborn babies,
is
they
used
don't
to.
have wants, they have needs. And those needs are all met by the mother. The only need that a baby has that you can happily hand over to the dad is to change its nappy.
Yeah,
And of course, cuddles and all of those things are fabulous as well. But this is somewhere where I said I'd like to talk about language. This is somewhere where I think the loss of sex based language around breastfeeding and mothering and maternity and all of those things, they've led to the point where there's a lack of understanding
yeah,
because there's the lack of the language being used to explain things. So, and it has real profound implications sometimes. For example, when you talk about a mother or parent, which is what is quite often used when you're looking at additive language, that means, well, either mother doesn't mean mother, or by parent you just mean mother. If you're saying mother or parent, and what you actually mean is the biological mother, the woman who's given birth, if you use both of those words to mean the same thing, then either one or both don't mean what it's supposed to. And when you talk about things like skin to skin, particularly immediately after birth, or you talk about safely co-sleeping with a child, or particularly a baby, it matters massively what language you use. And something that I know of, because I've talked to counsellors who've experienced this when supporting mothers, is that they've seen that there's talk of skin to skin after birth is really important for the mother or parent. And by that, completely understandably, the dad comes along and goes, well, I'm the parent, skin to skin on me. That's really important. But what skin to skin can do is it's a really good foundation when you're establishing breastfeeding. It helps with your supply. There are studies that show skin to skin between the baby and the mother helps milk supply. Obviously, the majority, once you've established breastfeeding, then it's all the feedback loop of supply and demand. But before that, skin to skin, I don't know how it works.
magic.
It really is. But if you've taken the fact that it's with the mother out of that equation, and it's just the mother or parent, then completely understandably, someone else, the dad, the partner, is having a skin to skin, lovely bonding cuddles, yes, with that baby, but the mother is missing out at a time when it is crucial for her and the baby to establish that milk supply and the bond there as well. And it can have a really significant impact on milk supply, because also the closer the baby is to the mother, the easier it is to pick up on feeding cues. And frequent feeding in the early days is another obviously really important thing when establishing breastfeeding. So that's one example of where language really matters. And when you talk about safe co-sleeping, a breastfeeding mother adopts what's known as the cuddle curl around a baby. So it's not possible for her to roll over onto a baby because of the way her body naturally she naturally positions her body. And that's not the case for mums who aren't breastfeeding. And it's certainly not the case for fathers or unrelated people who are unrelated to the baby, or the other women who are unrelated to the baby.
Yeah.
So these things really matter hugely. And when you start interfering with words that are as universally understood as mother, that is when you cause confusion, you can cause harm. In the case of a co-sleeping tragedy where someone would roll onto the baby, which can happen, and you are removing the mother and baby from the centre of breastfeeding support. And you can't have breastfeeding without the mother and the baby. Anyone else, they can be fabulous, they can be wonderfully supportive, but they're not who it's about. It's all
Absolutely.
about the mother and baby. And they are the ones that we must focus on. We can talk about other things that the father can do. He can bring the cups of tea. He can cuddle the baby while the mum has a shower, while when she's fed the baby and just needs 10 minutes to herself, which happens, obviously. But the
You
idea
can
that,
bring lots of food. I remember being
oh,
very, very
yes.
hungry.
Yes, my husband used to leave me toast and orange juice on the bedside table when he left for work for, quite frankly, months after I needed it, but I wasn't going to tell him to stop. So, yeah, the language issue from the point of view of how we centre the mother and baby is absolutely crucial, but it's also really important in terms of accessibility and inclusion. So if you have anyone who's looking for information about breastfeeding, whether it's the father looking to try and support his partner, or whether it's the mother looking for support herself, if language isn't clear about who is meant, it's no use. If you're using so-called inclusive language, it's not going to be clear who is being talked about when it means the mother. If you are using additive language, that is problematic on a number of ways, like I've already said, but also for those who have a lower level of literacy, whether it's through English as a second or subsequent language, whether it is because of dyslexia, or just whatever the reason,
Yeah,
it's so much harder to take in information where there are all these extra words which not only aren't needed, but they confuse.
yeah.
And a very long time breastfeeding counsellor and I had a conversation about this online. And she said that, yes, she'd found it a bit confusing to start with, but once she got the hang of it, it was fine. Well, that's all very well, but this is a woman who has been a breastfeeding counsellor for decades, who already understands the information that is being presented. She doesn't need to understand it. And the fact that she gets used to it, it's clear from just that phrase that it takes getting used to. And we're all about supporting mothers who are desperate and looking for information in the middle of the night. They haven't got
Scared.
the brain space. Exactly. They haven't got the brain space to sit and think, okay, so who do they mean by that? And is that me or is that my partner? Any health related language or information should be clear and simple. And that's certainly the case for anything to do with breastfeeding because it's so important. I've spoken to so many people, women. It's women. It's not people. It's women. It's just women who've ever come up to me and talked to me about what it meant to them decades ago. I used to hold my breastfeeding support meetings in a pub for a while because we used to hold it in a scout hut and then that was knocked down to be rebuilt. So we had it in a local pub and they were lovely, brilliant. One time, a woman who I knew from the choir that I'm in, who I think she was in her 70s, she walked past and noticed, and she came to talk to me in the break at choir the following week to talk about her breastfeeding experience and how it hadn't gone well and how that still mattered to her in her 70s. I was at a women's rights network thing in Derby recently, and again, someone approached me and she had been a single mother, a teen single mother who was estranged from her family. And she had found the womanly art of breastfeeding in the library and how that had meant so much and it enabled her to breastfeed. It matters. And it's something
I
that
was a teenage parent actually, and I found it incredibly hard. And I think I would have had an easier time if I'd had more support from, well, people like you, women like you. Yeah. Of course, it was before the internet as well, so there was no Googling what to do. It was like, I mean, I had like I was bleeding and all sorts. It was really painful. Um,
Yeah, it makes such a difference. And even if you don't have problems, I think that's something that we'd also really like to make clear is that, yes, we're there if you're finding it tricky and you need support with attachment and positioning, or if you've got questions about whether something's normal. And so often the answer is yes, that's normal. If you and the baby are comfortable, yeah, your baby might be wanting to feed every hour and a half or so, or in the evening feels like they want to be permanently attached, and that's normal. But if you don't have women to talk to,
yeah,
mothers who've been there, done that, it's so easy to think, I've not got enough milk. My baby wants to feed all evening. That they must be starving. Whereas actually, that's just what we call cluster feeding, and it's completely normal, usually at a really inconvenient time, particularly if you've got older kids, but it's normal. And if you ride it out, it'll pass. And so knowing what's normal is such a big part of breastfeeding support and reassurance,
absolutely.
all of those things. But having other breastfeeding mums to talk to.
Yeah, I think it would have made a difference to me as well because I just remember it being really difficult and really exhausting, and it was physically and emotionally and just difficult in every way. Amazing as well,
Absolutely.
but really
Yeah. Then
challenging.
having a baby is physically,
Yeah,
emotionally exhausting. So it might not have, I mean, obviously, if you've got bleeding nipples, then there's the positioning issue there. But just having a baby is so overwhelming. And just having other women, other mothers to talk to about those things. And if you're pregnant, to go along and talk to have a little bit of an idea. Nothing can really and truly prepare us for the reality of having this tiny, completely and utterly vulnerable life, completely dependent on us. But just meeting other mums beforehand and building that community of mothers, of breastfeeding mums in an area is something else that's very much part of what we are going to be doing, what we already are
yeah.
doing, because we've already got a few meetings on the go. So that's
Sounds
another
amazing.
thing.
Have you come across any challenges, like in terms of getting rooms and stuff? Is anyone like, who's captured trying to stop you from booking rooms or anything like that?
I don't think so yet.
Thank
Quite the
goodness for
contrary.
that.
Certainly in Nottingham, I had a message on Twitter saying, if anyone's in Nottingham, and I hadn't said at that point where we were, then I can offer a free room and tea and coffee. So I'm going to hopefully visit the venue next week.
Oh, that's good because Nottingham's quite bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And when I was cancelled, or when I had my accreditation removed, I went round to the venue where we had been having them and told them what had happened. And they were absolutely appalled and lovely. And they said, if you ever start up something new, do come back. And if you can't afford it, we'll see what we can do for the price. And I must go and say thank you to them. But I've been offered a free venue. So quite frankly, that's going to trump it. And it's in a better area in terms of reaching more mums. It's on the
Yeah,
tram line and the
yeah.
the bus lines, and there's a car park. And I'm really excited to be able to start doing it again.
Hmm.
So, because it's been over a year since I've been able to run my support meetings.
It'll be like riding a bike though, won't it? Like just
I hope so.
familiarity and yes, can't wait to get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, hopefully we'll have plenty of mums come along, and pregnant women too. That's one of my favourite things about breastfeeding support is when a mum comes when she's pregnant and she meets other mums and she expresses some of her concerns and she gets some suggestions and information from all those other mums who've been there, done that, and then she comes back a month or two later with a baby and it's going well. That's the ideal. Doesn't
Yeah,
always work because obviously things don't always work, but that's it's one of the most fabulous things you can possibly have.
just all sounds really great.
Yes. Yeah, we are. We're really excited to be able to grow as well.
Yeah,
But it is going to take time because we're doing everything properly. We're making
yeah.
sure that anyone who joins us has got the breastfeeding knowledge and the mothering side of things as well, and all of those things so that we can.
You have to build all those foundations, don't you, before you can like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
launch it's all the stuff behind the scenes that takes the longest.
Yes, but the wisdom that it's all founded on, that has been handed down mother to mother for generations, we've got that.
Yeah.
And we've got our guiding principles, which is based on those wisdom. That was really appalling grammar. We've got the guiding principles that are based on all that wisdom. And yeah, we're doing things right. We've got our policies in place. We're writing the procedures. We are making sure that we have safeguarding training and all of the GDPR stuff as well. The joy of the stuff that you really don't go into breastfeeding support to do
Yeah.
GDPR training. It's one of those things that you have to make sure everything's like I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and all of those things as well.
So I'm thinking for anyone who's watching,
Yep.
probably mostly women
Yep.
who are watching, if they wanted to help you, what sort of things would you need the most?
Money. We do still need money, and we're going to carry on needing money because all of our support is free to access. So we are going to be reliant on donations, whether as regular supporter members or one off. That would be absolutely fabulous. There's a donate button on our website. If you Google MoMa
I'll put it
breastfeeding,
in the link. I'll put it in the show
brilliant.
notes.
That will be fabulous. Have a look where we are. If you are a breastfeeding mum or you know a breastfeeding mum, come along. You don't need to be having any issues at all. And one of the best things at a support meeting, there are quite a few best things, is when, as the woman facilitating the mother, because I am a mother, I have children, they are both adults now,
Yeah.
which is quite scary, but is just to be able to sit back and let the mother to mother support happen. So if the mum is just at the end of her tether with something related to breastfeeding or just related to mothering, for other mothers to go, God, yeah, that was a nightmare. It passed. It didn't last too long. Or actually, I tried this and it helped me. Those are the things that are brilliant. And experienced mums who breastfed or are still breastfeeding their own babies come along, help with the teas if your kids are at school or whatever. That be fabulous. You can see we will keep adding to our website about where our meetings are and spread the words. Really.
Yeah.
One thing that I haven't mentioned is where MoMA comes from.
Yeah.
It stands for Mother's Make, which I had tweeted. I put it out on social media, a little explanation, because Mothers Make the organisation. We're all mothers. Those of us who set it up, they make the groups, they make the community, and obviously they make the babies and the milk, the breast milk.
Yeah.
So that's where MoMA comes from. And I also really like that it sounds a little bit like Mama or Mama or
Yeah.
that kind of thing,
I
which
really like
depending
the
where you
name.
are in the country, you can pronounce it however you like, but we're
Yeah.
calling it MoMA, but that's where that comes from.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I would put MoMA, I think.
Yeah,
MoMA. But yeah, I think it's a lovely name. It's
thank you.
quite simple and easy to remember and stuff. So yeah. So yeah. So I will put the link to the website in the show notes. Ruth, thank you so much for coming to talk to me today. I know you've
Thank
got
you for
other
having
things
me.
going on.
I have indeed, yes.
Yeah, but thank you so much for taking the time. Sure, it'll be a well received episode because you've got lots of valuable support to give women.
We absolutely have. Yeah. Thank you very much, Kelly.